Hello, good day. After almost a month of absence, I restart the podcast series. I was traveling in China, and in the future, I will share my experience on this journey to China. It's very important for the future of our work. But let me start this week with an assessment of how the Israel Iran war has changed the world. Um, I think that if we look at in a summary what can be said about the attack of Israel and the United States, that you could say it was a tactical victory and a strategic defeat. And one of the commentators on YouTube used this and compared with Pearl Harbor, where the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the US Marine base, was able to destroy it, but at the end of the day, that victory turned into a strategic defeat. And in the case of Iran, the tactical victory was that in the first 8 hours, Iran air defense wasn't functioning due to the attacks. Many senior military officials and nuclear scientists have been killed during the Blitzkrieg. So Israel, the US, and their supporters rejoiced and were happy and thought that this was the beginning of the end of Iran. But then it turned out that Iran recovered very fast and started the offensive with a barrage of rockets destroying the economic and military infrastructure of Israel. And after 12 days, the Israelis begged for a cessation of hostilities, which Trump calls a ceasefire, but a ceasefire requires a ceasefire agreement, and there's no agreement, just a cessation of hostilities. Now, if you look at the strategic implications, then the most important thing is the change in Iran. One of the weakest points of Iran during the past decades, basically, they built up a military strength, they built up, despite the economic boycott, a apparatus of support for the axis of resistance. Yet in Iran, the question of the relationship with the West was for a long time a divisive issue. Can you trust the West? Can you reach a deal? There were many people in Iran thinking that at the end of the day, you could reach a deal with the West and on the nuclear issues, get rid of the economic boycott, and live in peace. And due to the economic boycott, but also to, I guess, some economic mismanagement, there was a lot of dissatisfaction in Iran, not so much with the system as with the policies. And the group in Iran that hopes for normalization of relations with the West was quite large, and to the extent that I think that now and sometimes they are called reformists. The terms Mahatma Gandhi is saying is not accurate. But anyway, the group was quite large, and the war has shattered their narrative. Hardly anybody in Iran now thinks that the West can be trusted. So it has closed the door for rapprochement with the West. There's no naivety anymore in Iran about what to expect from the West. And that means that it opens the door for new developments. And one of the things is the rejuvenating of the Islamic Revolution, meaning that people in Iran who were, not lost somehow their trust in Islamic Revolution, now discover that the strategic insights of their leader Ali Khamenei has been enormous, and it leads to a new look at the power of Iran ideologically, spiritually, and also in other aspects. There's an emphasis on economic relations with the global south, and there's a military cooperation now with Russia and China. Now, the question of reinventing the Islamic Revolution was seen immediately after the strikes in Iran. People took to the street in support of the armed forces. There was panic, obviously, in the first hours, but it was clear that the people were standing behind the armed forces, behind the government, behind the leadership, and they cooperated actively with the police in search of the spies, because one of the things that the Mossad succeeded in doing is using this division in the Iranian society to recruit people, quite a few among the Afghan refugees in Iran, but also otherwise. And the chief of police says that 90% of their success in catching spies, traitors, and those who were deceived was achieved by the people and the reports they gave. Since the beginning of the war, the number of 110, that is the 911 call, in Iran has increased by 41% compared to the same period. And he said all this increase was due to the cooperation of the people in cases that were suspected. So what you see is that gives you an idea that people are not just, are not intimidated. They are actively looking to strengthen the revolution, strengthen the defense, and that's this amazing thing. So we'll have to see what the lasting impact of this is, but I don't see those people arguing for a trust in the West that they will find a willing ear in the coming years, maybe coming decades, because this experience of the unprovoked attack will have a lasting impact. And you see now, very shortly after the attacks, the Iranian government announced the initiation of a major national reconstruction program aimed at revitalizing key sectors of the economy and infrastructure as part of a broader national development strategy. The plan, which encompasses housing, agriculture, industry, and core infrastructure, is framed as a step towards improving Iranians' quality of life while strengthening the nation's capacity to withstand both internal and external pressure. And they will focus on BRICS and the Global South. Now, what you see here is that those who are arguing for a rapprochement with the West thought that would lead to the abolition of sanctions and economic development in cooperation with the West. That is gone now, and they have quite quickly taken up the issue of economic development based on other partners, basically BRICS and the West, the Global South. The other important thing is that the military cooperation with Russia and China has been lingering there, but it takes dramatic steps now. And one of the most important events of the past week was that Donald Trump said Friday that he had a telephone call with President Putin, and he was disappointed because it appeared that Putin is not looking to stop Russia's war in Ukraine. The US attempt to end Russia's war through diplomacy has largely stalled. So what does it tell you? The whole idea and the policy of Trump was, I know people, I know world leaders, they respect me, and if they respect me, I can make a deal. And now it turns out that Putin looks at Trump and thinks, what an idiot this guy is. It's just pathetic. So he cuts the crap and says, do whatever you like to do, but I'm telling you, we have aims in Ukraine, and those aims, we are going to meet them. And it's getting even worse because Putin is saying the land that we now have conquered in Ukraine will stay with Russia. And this is about surrender. This is not about ceasefire, etc. And Trump's personality and bragging, etc., couldn't do anything about it. So it turns that they regard Trump as a clown. And what does it mean for Iran? That they regard Iran as a serious partner in changing the world, because Russia, China, and Iran are leading the transformation of the new world. So Russia is moving away from compromise with the US, and that will strengthen the relations with Iran. Iran took another big decision, which to replace the GPS system, which is controlled by America, by the Chinese navigation satellite system called Beidou. Iran is buying advanced fighter jets from China. And Xi Jinping last week said, our strategic interests in the Middle East will no longer be threatened. We will stand with Iran. Meaning this, if Iran would fall, the Islamic Revolution was crushed, and the West would have taken over and put a new government, strategically that would be a big loss for China. Economically, because of the oil they are buying from Iran, and which a new possible government would use that as a pressure point on China. So Xi Jinping sees that the survival of the Islamic Revolution is advantageous for China. And then the regional balance of power. The old reality of the West was that there would be Abraham Accords and these family dictatorships in Saudi Arabia and the Emirates would have a fundamental agreement with US and Israel. And now these family dictatorships face a new reality. In a new war, and a new war is inevitable, they will have to choose close the American bases or face Iranian rockets, destroying the bases and even their economy. And the war that was aimed to destroy the revolution failed in its aim. Iran is now a military force that they have to wait against the military force of Israel and US. Before the war, they might think, oh, we are protected by Israel, we are protected by the US, and in a confrontation between Iran and the West, Iran will lose, so we bet on Israel and US. And now Iran has won the war. They have to think twice about the stand they're taking. And I want to remind you, I've been studying the life and works of Ali Khamenei. Professor Amali from the University of Tehran just released a book. You can go to the website of the Islamic Human Rights Commission to find the book, a new biography of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And I'm amazed for his strategic vision, because there were many instances in which Iran could have initiated a war. The assassination of General Soleimani, the bombing of the Iranian embassy in Syria, the assassination of Hamas leader Haniyeh in Tehran. And Khamenei chose not to do so and exercised strategic weakness. And some people interpreted that as weaknesses, strategic patience, sorry. But His main goal was build a broad unity in Iran for the coming years. And knowing that sooner or later the US and Israel would engage in a war with Iran, he knew that, and they were preparing for it for decades, that there will be a war. But that war will not be initiated by Iran, because if they did, Iran would be in a different environment. People would question the wisdom of their attack. But now that they have been attacked, the situation has changed dramatically. And people in Iran are firmly behind his vision of declining to work with the West because the West is untrustable. So on the issue of on the nuclear issue, which was not the issue about attack, this is about the change of government and the crushing of the Islamic Revolution. It's not about the atomic energy thing. But in that regard, Iran was always on the defensive. There was discussion about a peace deal, the inspection of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and now the situation has changed dramatically. The war has brought Iran from defense to offense. It has the initiative now. It can decide on whether to talk or not. It has expelled the International Atomic Energy Agency, and now the West has to wait for its next move. And that next move is nuclear ambiguity. You don't know what Iran is going to do. So if you don't know, when will you attack? So the threat of attack now is meaningless because they expect an attack. And before the war, the threat of attack determined people's attitude whether to negotiate or not. And now Iran is saying, we know that you're going to attack. In fact, during the negotiations, you betrayed the negotiations and you betrayed diplomacy and attacked us. So what's the point in having discussion? Why are we going to talk about it? Now, I always say that we should look to the development in Western Asia through a historical lens. And my argument is that we are in the transition from an old colonial world civilization towards a new world civilization. It has an economic and military component and political component, which is called multipolarity. You know, we are moving from a unipolar to a multipolar world. This is about economics, politics, military, but it's also now about knowledge production, because civilization is based on knowledge production. And if the West is not an alternative for liberals, liberalism and socialism are now in discussion, and decolonial theory and Islamic liberation philosophy are things on the table now. And I argue that we need an alliance of secular and religious anti-imperialist movements in the world. And intellectuals from those movements should build a new foundation for a new world civilization. So I'll leave it at that. I'll stop for now, but rest assured that in the coming weeks and months, I'll come back to the theme of the transition period in which we are living now and how to understand it. Thank you for your attention. I hope to see you next week.